No one saw this coming 6 months ago when North Korea threatened to shoot a nuclear missile at the West Coast. And a month ago, Democrats like Senator Richard Blumenthal warned Trump will fail on North Korea. Obama's national security advisor, Susan Rice, said, "We must live in a world that tolerates North Korea nukes." But now look at these breakthroughs. Let's bring in one of the best experts on this story. He is a retired four-star general and Fox News military analyst, General Jack Keane. It's so great to see you, General. Why are these breakthroughs happening now? What's happening behind the scenes? Can you take us there?
Well, I think it's largely because of President Trump. I mean, he put maximum pressure on this regime economically. 3 UN resolutions. Secretary Tillerson and the State Department assured the states out there, he forced them to absolutely comply, not to partially comply or not to ignore it, which has happened with other sanctions. They put in question that country's relationship with the United States if they do not comply. So much so that my sources told me a number of weeks ago that we had shut off about 80% of the revenue. We got the United States Navy intersecting the back door that ships have been using to provide supplies to Kim Jong-un. So that squeeze is real. The second thing is I believe North Korea, China, and the region fundamentally has come to the conclusion that President Trump's military option is real and deadly serious. You put those two together, and I think you have what's happening here. And it's really quite unprecedented, Liz, when you think about it. In the last 90 days, this all began with Kim Jong-un's initiative to want to go to the Olympics. And out of that came a summit with President Moon. Out of that came a meeting with Director Pompeo. And out of that came a desire for a meeting with President Trump. And as you just said, they just talked to each other, Moon and Kim, and he wants to denuclearize, and he wants to end the Korean War by the end of this year with an armistice signed by North Korea, South Korea, China, and the United States. The logical next step to that, which should also be another historical shoe to drop, would be these two armies, two of the largest armies in the world, are in a standoff, and they've been in a standoff since 1953 on the border facing each other. The next logical step is to pull them away from that border. And that would be also, you know, breathtaking if that takes place.
General, no, I don't think nobody saw this coming. It's a stunning breakthrough. The president is being talked about that President Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize. But what should President Trump, what does he need to do when he meets with Kim Jong-un?
Well, you know, stick to his guns. That's number one. He's already told them that. You know, and I agree it's unprecedented. You know, the only frame of reference I have for this is the unexpected and sudden collapse of the Soviet Union when the Berlin Wall came back in 1989, and we were all caught like a deer in the headlights looking at it and said, oh, my, isn't that something? That's kind of what's happening here.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
But listen, we got to also know that the pattern of history is on the side of North Korea, and they're always manipulating us and cheating and gaming us. I believe President Trump, we don't know for sure if that's going to happen or not. But once he gets in the meeting, here's what I believe will happen. If Kim Jong-un is serious and he really wants to change and build a new chapter in this relationship, which he has stated, and he's serious about denuclearization, he'll want to freeze, disarm, and then disable, but he'll want to take it years to do that.
They are in economic collapse. He does not want to suffer the same fate. Kim Jong-un does not want to end up like Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. I mean, I think that's the issue. No, he does not. I think that's what's going on.
Then the second thing, he'll want to drag it out, but he'll want concessions.
Yeah.
If he's not serious, as President Trump pushes him for milestone dates, inspections, verification, all the rest of that, and he doesn't budge, and he can't get him to move in the right direction, then I think President Trump will do exactly what he's saying he would do, and that's get up and walk out.
He's really squeezing them hard. Let's switch gears. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President Emmanuel Macron, they both tried to persuade President Trump not to fulfill his campaign promise and to stay in the Iran nuclear deal. The president's saying, no, we're getting out of it. And you know what's striking here, General? Now, Germany and France is saying, you know what, the original Iran deal was bad. It does not curb Iran, and it does not contain Iran's nuclear aspirations. The president is hanging tough on Iran and North Korea. They're both linked, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the United States is making some genuine progress. Unknown to the American people, we have been talking to Germany, England, and France for weeks now to try to come up with a supplemental. You know, the deal in place, but we've got to improve it. What are they really talking about? One, a prohibition on ballistic missile testing and development. Two, access to the secret military sites that we don't have access to now. That's a fact.
Is that the president calling you? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I wish it was.
Yeah.
Three, the other issue is the sunset clauses. In 2025, they can start spinning centrifuges and enriching uranium again. By 2030, they have a pathway to a nuclear weapon. That's a better deal than we're giving the Sunni Arabs. But here's what's happening. We've got agreement from those three countries on the first two I mentioned. We don't have agreement on a third. And before Macron left, he was talking about the possibility of an agreement on a third. So where is Secretary of State Pompeo right now? He's in Europe. He's going to those countries.
Whoa, what
he's going to be talking to those three countries about what we've been negotiating, what President Trump is negotiating with Macron and also with Merkel. Whether that's going to change them or not, I don't know. But listen, this is a better possibility than we were on this issue 6 months ago also.
General Keane, what amazing insight. You really gave us a backstory on what's going on behind the scenes. Great to see you, sir. We really welcome you on the show. We'd love to have you back soon. Great stuff.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Sorry for the phone interruption.
No, I don't mind. We don't care. And thank you for your service to our country, sir. Thanks again.